4-year-old son, Sean. She worked as a secretary at a local store that had previously belonged to her father. Colleagues and close friends said that Dorothy preferred to spend most of her time at home. Dorothy was a devout Christian and had no habits such as alcohol or smoking. Her family babysat her son while she was at work. The father of her son mentioned that Dorothy was seeing a man, but the family was unaware of any permanent boyfriend. A few months before her disappearance, she received anonymous phone calls at her workplace from an unknown man who confessed his love for her and sometimes made senseless threats. This unknown caller claimed to be following Dorothy wherever she went, even providing details of her daily life. Frightened by the accuracy of these details, Dorothy realized it was not a prank. She told her mother that she recognized the voice but could not recall who it belonged to. One day, the unknown caller suddenly phoned and said he had prepared a surprise outside. When she went out, she found a faded red rose on her car's windshield. According to her mother, one of the last calls from this man particularly terrified Dorothy. During that conversation, he said, "One day, when you are alone, I will tear you apart so that no one will find you." After these disturbing calls, Dorothy decided to buy a gun for self-defense and began taking karate lessons about a week before her disappearance. On the evening of Wednesday, May 28, 1980, Dorothy left her son at her parents' home and attended a meeting at her workplace. During the meeting, she noticed that her colleague, Conrad Bostron, looked unwell. Upon closer inspection, she saw a red bump on his arm and, fearing inflammation, convinced him to go to the hospital. Another colleague, Pam Head, offered to accompany them. Dorothy, Conrad, and Pam got into Dorothy's 1973 white Toyota Corolla and drove to the hospital. On the way, they briefly stopped at her family home to check on her son, Sean. While there, she inexplicably replaced her black scarf with a red one. They then returned to the car and proceeded to the hospital. Upon arrival, doctors determined that Bostron's arm was inflamed due to a spider bite. While Bostron was in the examination room, Dorothy and Pam waited in the lobby, chatting about other colleagues. Eventually, Conrad left the room, still trying to recall when and where the spider might have bitten him. Afterward, Pam and Bostron queued at the hospital pharmacy to purchase prescribed medication. Dorothy told Bostron she would bring the car to the hospital entrance to spare him the walk to the parking lot, then left. When Bostron collected his medicine, he and Pam waited at the exit for Dorothy to arrive with the car. However, neither Dorothy nor her car appeared. After some time, they grew worried, but felt relieved when they saw her car approaching. Yet, the car sped past them at high speed without stopping. Blinded by the headlights, Pam and Conrad could not see the driver and waved for it to stop. The car made a sharp right turn and exited the parking lot. They chased after it, watching it disappear into the night. Interestingly, the original newspaper article about the incident mentioned another car driving in front of Dorothy's vehicle, though this detail was omitted in subsequent reports. Pam and Bostron speculated that something might have happened to her son, prompting them to go to Bostron's house to wait for Dorothy to contact them. 2 hours passed with no word from her. Pam then called Dorothy's family to ask if she had returned home, but her parents said they had not seen her all evening. After a while, they reported the situation to the police, who found no immediate cause for concern that night. The family still hoped Dorothy would return, but hours later, her car was found burned out on a narrow street 16 kilometers from the hospital. There was no trace of Dorothy inside. In the following days, the police began investigating her disappearance and advised Jacob Scott, Dorothy's father, to refrain from commenting to newspapers, television reporters, or the media for the time being. However, everything changed a week later when the phone rang at her parents' home. Vera, Dorothy's mother, answered. "Do you know Dorothy Scott?" an unknown male voice asked. "Yes," Vera replied. The caller said, "I do too," and hung up. Another week passed, and Jacob Scott's patience wore thin. He contacted a local newspaper and shared his daughter's disappearance story. That same day, the newspaper editor's phone rang. The caller said, "I killed her. I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She lied to me. I killed her." The caller also provided details, knowing that Dorothy wore a red scarf that night and was aware of Bostron's spider bite. He claimed Dorothy had called him to report she was at the hospital. However, since it was 1980 and cell phones did not exist, if she had used the hospital phone, staff would likely have reported it to the police. This suggests the caller may have been lying, as Dorothy had not contacted him. Pam, who was with Dorothy while Bostron was in the examination room, told police that Dorothy did not make any calls that night, except for a brief trip to the restroom before heading to the parking lot. The police found no evidence or suspects and gradually closed the investigation. However, the unknown caller's phone calls persisted. For 4 years, the Scott family's phone rang every Wednesday at noon, with Vera alone at home. "Is Dorothy home?" he would ask, followed by claims that he had killed her. The police installed a tape recorder at the Scott home and recorded the caller's voice, which was thick and disguised, but no one recognized it. Attempts to trace the calls failed, as the caller did not stay on the line long enough. The regular calls abruptly stopped in April 1984, when Jacob, rather than Vera, answered, possibly leading the caller to think new residents occupied the house. 5 months after the last call and 4 years after Dorothy's disappearance, a worker found skeletal remains on Santa Ana Street. The remains initially belonged to a dog, but beneath them were human bones partially covered with soil. The bones included a hip bone, 2 thigh bones, arm bones, and a skull. Alongside them were a turquoise ring and a watch stopped at 12:30 on May 29, 1980, the day after Dorothy's disappearance. Dorothy's mother confirmed the turquoise ring belonged to her daughter. A week later, police confirmed the remains were Dorothy Scott's. Following a newspaper article about the findings, the Scott family's phone rang again, and a familiar voice asked, "Is Dorothy home?" Dorothy's father, Jacob Scott, died in 1994, and her mother, Vera Scott, passed away in 2002. They never learned the identity of their daughter's killer. 40 years have passed since Dorothy Scott's abduction, and her murder remains a mysterious and unsolved case.